Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Obviously, with the Season 3 Reloaded update, we ended up going through and seeing a pretty significant meta update that certainly shifted things around. And so today, after the update, now that we've gone through, we've tested a bunch of different builds, we've seen the updated stats, we need to update the overall meta tier list. I do have this on my community page, so if you ever want to go through and just see which weapons are currently the absolute meta, which ones are more so just really good, the A tier, the more viable, decently competitive, but nothing too crazy B tier, very average C tier, very underwhelming D tier, or either niche or completely trash E tier. This list is always available for you guys to check out if you're just jumping in trying to see what some of the go-to options are. But that said, we've got to go through and update things based on the notes here. So first up, we do have a couple of new weapons to go through and drop in. First up with the 1911, we haven't updated this list since this ended up dropping. This is just going to be right in there with like the other pistols. It's a C tier option. It's not going to be anything that crazy. The Siren, unfortunately, cool on paper, very gimmicky, very satisfying to get kills with, but from a competitive standpoint, it is absolutely not it. This is going to fall in the E tier just as a niche option, not necessarily because it's awful, although it's definitely not an easy or convenient weapon to use. It's just niche. It's meant for that more fun play style there. Then obviously the katana is there. That is, of course, though, just a melee, so much like all the other melees, that is also going to fall under the E tier with niche there. So as far as new content goes, a little bit underwhelming there, but I think it kind of made up for it with a very balanced meta update here that does directly attack several top tier choices and shift things around in a couple of different categories. Bear in mind, as we are going through all the updates, all the changes that happen, and where the new weapons rank here. If you guys enjoyed the video, you find this information helpful, do me a favor, hit that like button. It's always seriously appreciated. And if you're new here, you want to ensure you are always in the know for everything going on in Call of Duty, there's no better place than right here. So feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. Now, I do have my handy dandy list of notes, including everything that ended up changing with the Season 3 Reloaded update, so we can go through, see what the changes are for any given gun, and then adjust accordingly. First up, the Mirage ended up getting a mid-range buff. It also got a headshot and a torso and a leg multiplier buff, and also a velocity buff as well. Now, quite frankly, the Mirage is pretty hard capped to being a sniper support option still, and in sniper support territory, I do think there are still a few more competitive choices than it. So unfortunately, I do think this kind of sits still on that B tier, A tier sort of border there. It's very close to A tier, but it's also very comfortable in B tier there. So while it is slightly better than it was before the update, I do think that's going to stay in the B tier. Now, this is a big one, the MK35 ISR. We know this was the #1 absolute meta, for the last little bit here for the start of Season 3. It got a pretty hard nerf. Range was nerfed, damage was nerfed, torso multiplier was nerfed. This, in my opinion, drops down into the A tier noticeably now. It's still going to be a super easy weapon to use, but its damage is not going to be that crazy. If you remember the Kilo towards like the end of Warzone 1, where it was an easy to use weapon and that's why people went to it, even though its TTK was like noticeably slower than an AMAX or than some of the Vanguard rifles, that's kind of like what the MK35 is going to be now. It's a very easy, straightforward gun that you're going to be very comfortable with, but it's not going to be the most competitive choice, but it's still very good. Now, the MXR, already an absolute meta rifle, ends up getting even better. So of course it's going to stay in this absolute meta tier, but now its damage is better and its velocity is better. Makes the gun even more effective, and it's truly got an argument for maybe being the #1 rifle right now. I mean, we've got some really strong choices in this category with the Voyak, the AK, the MXR here, even the Peacekeeper, if you're just focusing on like its sniper support properties. Those are the big three really, though, the Voyak, AK, and MXR, and they have all got a really strong argument. Oh, and speaking of which, the Voyak also ended up getting a buff here to its range and its velocity, so it is also even easier to use over range now, which is fantastic as well. So if you were a fan of it beforehand, it's gonna get even better. It's gonna feel even stronger and even more efficient over that long range. And while we are talking the rifles here, just as we're going through the list, I will say I do think the Peacekeeper probably drops down into the A tier as well. Again, fantastic for sniper support, but also when you're looking at the overall meta here, a lot of the sniper support options do live in A tier as it stands, and so I think that's a little bit more appropriate for actually fine-tune adjusting the absolute meta category. Next up here, the MPC, an SMG that we really haven't talked much of here for a while, ended up getting a buff to its damage, its range, its torso multiplier, and its control. And quite frankly, it's basically right there with the Raiden, more so like in the A tier. Like, they're almost identical in terms of stats. It's going to come down to, do you think the Raiden is easier to use than the MPC? Okay, then vice versa. You know, use whichever one you're more familiar with, more comfortable with. There certainly is a gap between it and, say, a Kogat or a Carbon, etc., but it's better than it was before, and it's actually a competitive SMG now, which you really love to see. Now, a big one here, the Razor got quite a hefty nerf as well to its damage, its ADS speed, and its control. This to me does knock it down more into the A tier. Quite frankly, almost the B tier. I'll keep it an A because I do think its first damage range is still competitive enough that if you're familiar with it, you're comfortable with it, you can probably get some decent kills against some other subs. But its damage drop off is very noticeable. So like, it is definitely you know, a reality check for the Razor here. It was the #1 SMG for a long time. It's certainly no longer in that top echelon, that top tier conversation any longer when you've got something like the Kogat, the VST, the Carbon all sitting here very comfortably. Next up, the Sturmwolf, an A tier SMG here, got a range buff and an ADS buff. It probably realistically should have been more of like a B tier SMG before this update. Now I'd say it probably jumps more into that classification of A tier, kind of in there with the mix of the Raiden and the MPC. The Razor, it's definitely going to be a little bit more effective than in terms of ease of use, especially if you get into the mid range there. So a decent SMG for sure. Definitely not absolute meta though. Now this one, it makes me laugh, quite honestly, and I love it. The MK78, I would say, is the single best long-range gun in the game. Just got even better. They buffed its range, they buffed its ADS speed, so it's more aggressive there. I mean, this thing just keeps getting better and better and better and better. And I'm a big fan of the gun, so I'm loving this for sure. This thing is the absolute meta long range option easily. Now the Sokol 545 down here in the B tier also ended up getting a buff to its range and its velocity. Its overall damage here is still a little bit lacking, especially over long range, and when it is still an LMG at the end of the day, it does need to be really strong over range for them to be effective, because you're not running and gunning with a Sokol with a heavy LMG like this. So while it's a fun weapon to use, it certainly is just more of that like above average. You can do well with it if you know what you're doing, but it's not going to be up there with like the best of the best in the category, which really is the MK78. There's a large gap in between those two. Then we also have the XM325, which ended up getting buffed as well for its range and its control, both better now. And this thing's actually gonna get a hefty boost up. I had it in D tier. It's gotten quite a bit better over the course of time here. I would say this is more of an A tier LMG, maybe borderline B tier, A tier. If you stack this thing with control, it turns into a laser beam, and it can kill very, very, very quickly. It's just very heavy and slow. So it's got that balance there, but damage-wise, TTK-wise for the long range, it's able to hold its own really, really nicely here. Then lastly, we did see one final sniper update to the VS Recon, an A tier sniper here. Got an ADS buff. You love to see that, but it's not the Strider 300, which is the absolute meta sniper. There is a noticeable difference there for sure. But really, what this update has done is given us a very, very definitive absolute meta for like the main three tiers: close range, long range, sniping. Sniping, Strider, and Hawker, the go-tos there. Like, you know, either or, whichever one you're landing more shots with, it's probably your meta sniper. For the long range, MK78, AK, Voyak, XMR, all low recoil options that are heavy hitters. And then for the close range, Kogat, VST, Carbon, all very fast TTK, very aggressive and pretty easy to use options there too. So really, this ends up being a very competitive meta now, still lacking a decent bit on some of the legacy weapons. Like we have a few up in here, the AMAX, the XMG, the HDR, the Victus, like viable for sure, the Kar98K and Resurgence. I just wish there was a lot more of like MW2, MW3, BO6 options down here in like the D tier and the C tier that make up the bulk of this, up towards, you know, A, maybe some in absolute meta, just to spice things up a little bit. But in terms of the Black Ops 7 balance here, they're doing a pretty solid job as far as that goes. That said, that is going to wrap things up for this video though. If you guys enjoyed it, be sure to drop a like. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button to guarantee you are always up to date for all things going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.